Look around you, at the skyscrapers that pierce the clouds, at the hospitals where life begins and ends, at the courthouses where justice is sought. Now look a little closer. Hidden in the folds of every city, every town, every village is a structure that is just as fundamental to the human experience. A place of worship, a church, a mosque, a temple, a synagogue. For centuries, these institutions, these established religions, have done more than just dot the landscape. They have shaped the very foundations of human society. The question is not whether they exist, but what is their true lasting importance in the life of an individual. When we talk about the importance of established religion and the structures it builds, we're not just talking about dogma or ritual. We are talking about the scaffolding of community. The human need for the sacred is not new. It is primordial. From the earliest shamans interpreting the movement of the stars and the rustle of the wind to the monumental constructions of Sumeria and Egypt, humans have sought to explain the inexplicable, the first religious systems, animismo, polytheismo, were attempts to find order in a world of chaos and fear. They gave a name to the thunder, a face to the river, a purpose to the harvest. They birthed the first social codes, the rules of conduct that allowed small groups to become tribes, and tribes to become civilizations. The religious code was the legal code, the moral compass, and the scientific understanding all rolled into one. The priest was the doctor, the scholar, and the king's advisor. When the great monotheismos, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, emerged, they did more than just simplify the pantheon. They introduced a universal morality, a sense of brotherhood that transcended clan and nation. They built hospitals, established the first universities, and preserved knowledge through dark ages. The church, during the medieval period in the West, was the very structure of society, providing stability and meaning where political structures failed. It became the patron of the arts, the arbiter of justice, and the definer of the year's rhythm, the source of hope and the source of fear. The practical, tangible good these organizations do in the world remains undeniable. They coordinate vast networks of charity. They provide comfort in bereavement. They mark the rites of passage that give shape to a lifetime of human experience. But with this profound historical power came a profound, unavoidable danger: the centralization of control. Think of the person crippled by anxiety, whose life feels like a constant draining battle. What does the religious community offer? It offers perspective. It takes a small, overwhelming personal problem and places it against the backdrop of eternity, reducing its scale. It offers communion, the profound realization that you are not the only one struggling, that the person weeping quietly 2 pews ahead is fighting a ghost of their own. And most powerfully, it offers ritual. The act of kneeling, of singing a hymn, of lighting a candle. These are ancient psychological tools that externalize internal pain and replace it with a focused moment of hope. This is the curative power woven into the fabric of faith. The shared belief generates a collective effervescence, a powerful emotional high that reaffirms the group's bonds and the individual's worth. The sheer statistical power of belief cannot be overlooked. Studies have consistently shown that strong religious faith correlates with lower rates of depression, anxiety, and substance abuse. This is the power of meaning. When you believe your life has a purpose directed by something greater than yourself, you are far better equipped to withstand the storms of existence. This is the heart of the Church's profound, enduring healing power. But here is where the story darkens, where the bright light casts a formidable shadow. The very mechanism that allows the institution to heal is the mechanism that allows it to control. To heal a church asks for trust and submission to a greater law, to control. The institution exploits that trust and enforces submission to its own earthly, often fallible laws. Throughout history, this institutional power has been used to justify crusades, inquisitions, and oppressive hierarchies. The Age of Enlightenment and the subsequent rise of modernity challenged this absolute religious authority, introducing the radical concept of secularisation. The world began to Disenchant the spheres of government law, science, and art, slowly separated from the domain of the sacred, the French Revolution, the American Constitution, the rise of scientific rationalism. These moments dismantled the notion that one's salvation or one's place in society depended on absolute obedience to a religious institution. This inherent tension forces the critical question that echoes loudly. In our present age, as igrejas são necessárias neste século? The answer is complex. It depends entirely on which necessity we are measuring. If necessity means the sole provider of absolute moral truth, the answer in a pluralistic secular society is increasingly no. Modernity has successfully decentralized moral authority, granting the individual cognitive autonomy to determine right and wrong outside the dictated boundaries of the temple or the cathedral. If necessity means a mandatory social structure for cohesion, the answer is also debatable as new secular institutions and online communities fill that void. However, if necessity means a consistent, accessible source of radical human connection, non-judgmental support, an embodied ritual in an isolating world, then the established church, in its best form, remains profoundly necessary. The constant digital noise of the 21st century often strips away genuine connection, leaving people feeling spiritually adrift. The church remains one of the few physical spaces dedicated not to commerce or politics, but purely to shared vulnerability and transcendence for the millions who feel crushed by individualism. The organized faith structure offers an inherited belonging, a sense of identity deeper than their career or consumption habits. The institution must adapt to this new necessity. Recognizing its power to heal must always outweigh its temptation to control. This abuse of institutional power, this imposition of control in the name of God, is the greatest betrayal of the very faith it claims to represent. This conflict brings us to the core dilemma for so many. People today, can a person truly live a full, moral, happy, and well-adjusted life without stepping foot inside an established church, mosque, or temple? The contemporary era, the age of pluralism and the secular self, answers this with a resounding yes. The world is filled with brilliant, ethical, compassionate people who find their spiritual nourishment in the silence of nature, in the pages of philosophy, in the practice of radical kindness, or simply in the warmth of their own honest introspection. Today, the spiritual marketplace is vast and competitive. Traditional institutions now coexist with New Age practices, Eastern philosophies, and a growing number of the nones, those who are spiritual but not religious. They have built their own personal sanctuaries. They have rejected the institution but have not rejected the divine. For them, the absence of organized religion is not a void, it is a freedom. A freedom from obligation, from judgment, and from the human intermediaries who sometimes obscure the simple truth of the sacred. They prove that a good life is not contingent upon a building address. Morality is not a membership card. Community can be forged around shared passions, shared struggles, and shared ideals entirely separate from any established creed. The institutional church is no longer the sole gatekeeper of the good life. It is one choice among many. So what is the ultimate conclusion to this millennia-old debate? What truly matters? If the institutions can heal but also control, and if a good life is possible without them, then the real importance of the church, the temple, or the mosque is not in its necessity, but in its potential. It is a catalyst. It is a gathering place. It is a tradition. It is a magnificent, flawed human attempt to grasp the untouchable, but it is never the source. The source, the true enduring power lies not in the attendance register, not in the collection plate, and not in the earthly authority of any leader. It lies in the unmediated, authentic, and utterly personal connection between the individual soul and the alto, the highest power. The important thing is faith itself. It is the quiet internal certainty that there is more to this existence than what can be counted or measured. It is the connection that makes you pause at the sight of a sunrise and feel a surge of gratitude. It is the spiritual discipline that compels you to forgive an enemy even when it is difficult. It is the belief that gives your suffering a deeper context and your joy a transcendent quality. The church is a road built by history, but faith is the eternal, personal journey. The beauty of the human spirit is its ability to seek the light no matter where it shines. Whether your path takes you through the echoing halls of a cathedral, or the silent path of a mountain trail, or the quiet corner of your own heart, the ultimate destination is the same peace. May you find your connection, may you trust your own sincere heart, and may the power of your faith, pure, undefiled, and your very own, be the force that heals you, guides you, and sustains you now and always. And in that profound personal connection, you will find a life that is truly blessed.